For more on the situation in Nevada, I want to bring on Ali Pardo, the 2020 Trump campaign Deputy Communications Director. So, Ali, we know that the Trump campaign is taking action against Nevada over its expansion of mail-in voting, but I know that you guys are also taking another effort in the state that I want you to break down. So can you explain what you guys are doing in the state of Nevada?
Yeah, there's two things here. The first is really just trying to pick apart what they're doing with universal vote by mail. It's disastrous. If you just look at what happened in New York, it took them over 6 weeks to count 40,000 ballots. What's going to happen when an entire state has to vote universal vote by mail? It's not practical. It's not going to work. And there's a lot of different parts of this that really end up hurting the voters and making it so your vote doesn't count.
And then when it comes to that state as well, I know that there are different efforts, for example, to kind of show the hypocrisy when it comes to certain issues or the double standard when it comes to maybe some of the reopening policies. Of course, we've talked to people on this program before who are from Las Vegas, and they talk about how businesses are starting to reopen, how casinos are even starting to reopen. But in some states, including Nevada, you still can't go to church. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And you know what? We're super excited to be going down to Nevada. We're getting a great group of evangelicals together to pray, to talk about the issues that matter most to them, to talk about how this president's agenda has put their values first and how his opponent does not. So I think we're really excited to have a big group together to pray, socially distant. We're going to be responsible. We're going to, follow the rules. But the point is, churches can also follow those rules and should be allowed to. And you know what? When you want to talk about hypocrisy in Nevada and coronavirus, I mean, look, they have all of these restrictions. They're saying universal vote by mail is better because it's a safer and more secure place and way to vote. But I don't buy that, because they also want to send paid political operatives into your living room, into the living rooms of seniors, to go and get their votes, take their votes with them, return them, and maybe not return them. We still don't know.
And I think it's important to note, too, that oftentimes when we're having this conversation, some of those who are more critical of the idea of kind of limiting mail-in voting on a universal scale will say, well, this individual does it. And the point is, yes, individuals have done it before, even individual states have done it before, but 3 months out of an election, completely revamping the system where all of a sudden you're having 200 million ballots or whatever it is going to end up having in that election just flow in a matter of 3 months in a completely new system, that's the problem. It's not necessarily just kind of speaking out about the idea altogether. Do you feel like this issue is kind of being distorted by those in the media?
Yeah, absolutely. You have two really good points that you made there. One, they're trying to change this just months before an election. That's not going to work. And also the second part of it is when you look at a state like Florida that does have no excuse absentee, it works. They know it's a tried and true system that we know works. They know how to get those ballots. They know how to send them out. They also verify them. And that's something that's extremely important. Nevada is taking away a lot of those verifications to ensure that your vote counts, and it only counts once. And that's to make sure that every single person whose vote, their voice is heard. And this bill does not do that. This bill takes that away.
And when we talk about campaigning, too, I understand that the coronavirus pandemic has changed things up. For example, the DNC convention doesn't look like it's going to be continuing as planned. Joe Biden won't even be in Milwaukee. And then we're also hearing, too, that the Trump campaign is taking extraordinary measures to remain socially distanced and safe, but they're taking more of a grassroots approach. They're going on the ground, knocking on doors across this country, which I think is a very underappreciated thing when you're talking about campaigning. Nowadays, we talk about big digital ad campaigns and stuff like that, but nothing really beats volunteers on the ground. Do you think that's a big advantage for the Trump campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have an advantage in the digital space, too. Yeah. But I think the thing is, not only are we beating them where they are, which is in the digital space every day, our programs and our content is outperforming that of the Biden campaign, but we are on the ground talking to voters. You know what? 4 years ago, this president ran on an agenda, and he's delivered promise after promise in that agenda, and it is our job to go and talk to voters about that. And we're going to, as a campaign, we're going to do our job. And like you said, we're doing it safely, we're doing it securely, we're following the rules given by each local and state government. But yeah, we're going to make sure this president gets reelected, because we need 4 more years of his bold leadership.
And when you talk about the digital realm, too, I mean, that was something that the Trump campaign was doing very impressively even before the coronavirus pandemic. And then, of course, it did come and it did change up the way that things are campaigning. Bill Stepien now on the top of the campaign, but Brad Parscale, we can't talk enough about his digital component, how excellent he is at that. I mean, it's something that is an art that goes underappreciated nowadays, but I mean, he's still at the top of that ticket as well, leading that charge with Bill Stepien. I think you guys really have a lot of momentum going to the final 3 months, but it's at this point kind of making that narrative and kind of contrasting it against what Joe Biden is doing. And I think that's what you guys are trying to do right now. But Ali, I really appreciate you coming on tonight and breaking down where you stand in the 2020 race. Thank you.